body is exhausted, but the mind refuses to lie down. You have been in bed for some time now. The room is dark. The sounds of the day have slowly disappeared. Doors have closed. Voices have faded. Somewhere outside, a distant vehicle passes and then is gone. Even the house seems to have settled into its own silence. You turn slightly beneath the blanket. You close your eyes. For a moment, there is nothing. Then a thought appears, something you said earlier. It was only a few words. Perhaps the conversation was ordinary. Perhaps nobody else even remembers it. But now, in the darkness, the words return. You hear them again. You hear your own voice. You hear the other person's voice. And then comes the small question. Perhaps I should have said something different. You turn again. The pillow is warm beneath your head. You try to let the thought go. But letting it go becomes another thought. What if they misunderstood? What if tomorrow is different because of what happened today? And now the mind has found another door. Tomorrow, there is something waiting there, a decision, a conversation, a task, a possibility. You begin imagining how it might unfold. You imagine one version, then another. If this happens, you will say this. If they respond that way, perhaps you will answer differently. And if something unexpected happens, you continue. Not because tomorrow has asked you to. Tomorrow is still many hours away. It has not even arrived. But your mind has already gone there. It walks through the rooms of a future that does not yet exist. It opens doors that may never be opened. It meets people who are still asleep. It prepares answers to questions nobody has asked. Then, somehow, the mind returns to yesterday. Another memory. Another mistake. Something you wish had happened differently. You examine it again, not because there is anything new to discover. You already know what happened, but perhaps, if you look at it one more time, you will find the missing piece. Perhaps you will finally understand why you did what you did. Perhaps you will discover the sentence that should have been spoken. Perhaps the past can be changed by understanding it perfectly. So you look again and again. The room remains dark. The night moves quietly outside. But inside you, the day has started over. This is the strange life of the restless mind. It does not need a real problem to keep moving. It can take a small uncertainty and make a home inside it. A question becomes another question. An answer creates another possibility. A memory becomes an imagined future. A future becomes a reason to return to the past. And soon, you are no longer thinking about one thing. You are thinking about thinking. You are wondering why you cannot stop. You tell yourself that you should be resting. Then you wonder why you are still awake. You notice the time. You calculate how many hours remain before morning. You imagine how tired you will feel tomorrow. And now, even the thought of being tired becomes something to worry about. The mind has turned rest itself into a problem. You close your eyes more firmly. You try to make everything quiet. But the moment you try to force silence, you become aware of every sound. The distant wind, the movement of the curtains. your own breathing. Another thought, then another. Perhaps this is why you have sometimes felt that your own mind is working against you. But perhaps it is not. Perhaps the mind is simply doing what it has learned to do. It sees uncertainty. It reaches for certainty. It sees an unfinished conversation. It reaches for an answer. It sees something that might happen tomorrow. It tries to arrive there early. There is something almost gentle about this when you look at it closely. Your mind may not be trying to punish you. It may believe it is helping. It may believe that if it thinks enough tonight, tomorrow will be easier. If it studies the past carefully enough, you will never make the same mistake. If it imagines enough possible futures, nothing will surprise you. If it keeps watch while the rest of you rests, perhaps you will remain safe. So the mind takes its position beside the door. It keeps watch. It listens. It searches. It asks. It does not know that there is nothing left to guard tonight. Outside your window, the world has already surrendered itself to darkness. Trees do not stand beneath the moon trying to predict the weather of tomorrow. A bird hidden somewhere in the branches does not rehearse every possible morning. A river does not stop in the night because it is uncertain about the shape of the valley ahead. The river simply moves. It reaches a stone. It bends. It continues. It reaches another stone. It bends again. There is no argument, no demand that the path become perfectly clear before the water can continue. You have probably spent much of your life doing something different, trying to see ahead, trying to understand everything, trying to make the uncertain certain. And during the day, this can look like wisdom. It can look like responsibility. Sometimes it is. There are things worth considering. There are choices that deserve care. There are mistakes from which something can be learned. But there is a quiet difference between thinking about something and holding it all night, between understanding and repeating, between preparing for tomorrow and living inside tomorrow before it arrives. At night, that difference becomes harder to see. Everything feels more important. A small concern grows larger because there are fewer distractions around it. A sentence becomes heavier. A possibility becomes more real. A memory becomes sharper. And the mind continues its work. It keeps turning the same stone in its hands. Perhaps you know this place well. You have visited it many nights. The same paths, the same questions, the same quiet attempt to find an answer that will finally allow you to rest. But tonight, something is slightly different. You do not need to defeat the thoughts. You do not need to tell them to disappear. You do not even need to understand them. For a moment, simply notice one. A thought about tomorrow. Let it be there. You do not have to follow it. Another thought appears. A memory. You notice it. You do not have to enter it. Another thought. Another possibility. You can let that one pass too. There is a subtle difference between pushing a thought away and not reaching for it. One requires effort. The other requires almost none. Imagine a leaf falling onto a quiet stream. It touches the water. It floats. The current carries it away. water does not chase it. The water does not ask where the leaf came from. The leaf does not need to be understood. It simply moves. Your thoughts may be like this. They appear. They remain for a little while. Then they move on. But perhaps you have been reaching into the stream after everyone, catching each thought, examining it, turning it around, asking where it came from, asking where it might lead. And each time your hand touches the water, more ripples appear. You may have thought that the answer was to make the water still, but perhaps you have been disturbing it without realizing it. The thought appears, you reach, the mind becomes active. Another thought appears, you reach again. The water moves. Then you become concerned that the water is moving, so you reach again. And the movement continues. Still, beneath all those ripples, the deeper water remains quiet. You cannot see it because the surface is busy, but it is there. Perhaps the same is true of you, beneath the thoughts, beneath the memories, beneath the plans, beneath the endless small calculations of the mind. There is a quieter place. You do not have to create it. You may not even have to find it. Perhaps you only have to stop disturbing the surface long enough to notice that it has always been there. The thought about tomorrow comes again. This time you notice it. You do not argue with it. You do not solve it. Tomorrow can remain where it belongs. Tomorrow. The memory from yesterday returns. You see it. You let it remain yesterday. And for one brief moment, the room feels larger. The darkness is no longer something you need to escape. The night is simply the night. Outside, a breeze moves through the trees. Somewhere beyond the walls, water continues its slow journey through the darkness. The moon is somewhere above the clouds. Even if you cannot see it, nothing is asking you to solve the whole of your life tonight. There will always be another question, another uncertain morning, another conversation, another road whose shape you cannot yet see, but you do not need to walk every road before you reach it. For now, you are here, in this room, in this quiet, listening to the soft movement of your own thoughts. And perhaps, for the first time tonight, you notice that they are moving without needing to take you with them. One thought passes, then another. The mind reaches for the next one, but somewhere in the darkness you pause. Not by force, not by command, only for a moment. And beyond the walls of the room, beyond the window, the night seems to open into a much older landscape. A narrow path disappearing into mist. Tall trees standing quietly on either side. The faint sound of flowing water. And somewhere farther along that path, beneath the shadow of ancient pines, a small light is burning. You cannot yet see who lit the fire. You only know that it is there, waiting in the darkness. And as another thought rises inside you, you find yourself wondering what might happen if, instead of following it, you simply watched it disappear into the night. The path ahead remains hidden. The fire continues to glow. And somewhere beyond the trees, the water keeps moving. The fire is still burning somewhere beyond the trees. You cannot see it clearly now. Only a faint glow remains between the branches. The path is quiet. And yet, as you imagine yourself moving toward it, you notice something familiar. Your thoughts have followed you. You leave the room, but they remain close. You walk beneath the trees, and the conversation from earlier is still there. You step over a root, and the question about tomorrow is still waiting. You hear the river somewhere in the darkness, but your mind is still speaking. It seems that changing the place has not changed the movement inside you. Perhaps this is what makes thought so strange. You can leave a room, you can leave a city, you can cross a mountain, and still the mind carries its unfinished business with you. You continue along the narrow path. Mist hangs low between the trees. The moon appears for a moment through the branches, then disappears again. Your footsteps are soft against the earth, and with every few steps, another thought arrives. You remember something from years ago. Not an important event, just a small moment, a look on someone's face, a sentence, a silence. You wonder what that silence meant. Perhaps you understood it one way at the time. Tonight, you understand it differently. You imagine what the other person might have been thinking. You create an explanation, then another. Soon, the memory is no longer simply a memory. It has become a story, and the story keeps changing as you walk. You may have noticed this in your own life. The past does not always remain still inside the mind. Each time you return to a memory, you bring the person you are today into the person you were then. You see the old moment with new knowledge, new fears, new hopes, new regrets, and so the memory changes, not necessarily because the past has changed, but because you have. You keep walking. The forest becomes darker. Then, through the trees, you see the river. It is wider than you expected. Moonlight rests on its surface in broken pieces. The current moves quietly around stones. You stop beside it. For a moment, the river seems to be doing what your mind cannot. It moves without needing to revisit where it has been. The water does not turn around to inspect the stone it passed an hour ago. It does not wonder whether it chose the correct path. It simply continues. You watch a small branch floating on the surface. It turns slowly, then disappears around a bend. You follow it with your eyes until you cannot see it anymore. Then a thought arrives. What if? You know this thought well. It is one of the mind's oldest doors. What if I had chosen differently? What if I had spoken? What if I had remained silent? What if tomorrow goes wrong? What if someone changes their mind? What if something happens that I cannot prepare for? The mind loves these questions because they seem useful. A question feels like the beginning of control. If you can imagine enough possibilities, perhaps you can protect yourself from uncertainty. So you begin rehearsing. You imagine tomorrow's conversation. You hear the words before they are spoken. You imagine their expression. You prepare your response. Then you imagine a different response from them, so you prepare again. The scene changes. You change your answer. The scene changes again. You change it again. There is no end to this rehearsal because there is no real conversation yet. You are preparing for an event that exists only in imagination. Still, your body may respond. as though it were already happening. The heart becomes slightly more alert. The shoulders tighten. The mind becomes quicker. You have not moved from the river, but you have already traveled into tomorrow. This is how one thought creates another. Not always loudly, sometimes so quietly that you do not notice the beginning. A memory creates a question. The question creates a possibility. The possibility creates a fear. Fear creates a plan. The plan creates another possibility. And soon the mind has built an entire landscape from a single thought. You stand beside the river and watch the current. Perhaps you recognize something. The first thought was never the whole problem. It was what happened afterward. The mind touched it, held it, turned it over, then touched the next thought, and the next. Like someone walking through a room filled with bells and touching every one of them. One sound begins, then another, then another. Soon you cannot remember which bell you touched first. You sit beside the river. The earth beneath you is cool. The fire in the distance is still visible through the mist. You can hear the water moving over stones. For a little while, you do nothing. Then another thought comes. You notice it. And instead of entering the thought, you watch it from a small distance. It feels unfamiliar. The thought is still there, but you are not completely inside it. There is a difference. You can see a cloud without becoming the cloud. You can hear a bird without following it through the forest. You can watch a leaf move downstream without reaching into the river. Perhaps thoughts can be watched in the same way. You do not need to stop them. You only need to notice their movement. A thought appears. It has a beginning. It remains for a while. Then something else takes its place. You may have believed that every thought was asking something from you, but perhaps many thoughts are simply passing through. The mind produces them. The mind notices them. And then another one comes. You do not have to answer everyone. This is difficult to remember when you are tired. At night, a thought can seem strangely convincing because there is nothing around it. No conversation to interrupt it. No sunlight. No ordinary movement of the day. A single thought can fill the whole room. You can take something uncertain and examine it until it feels certain, not because you have discovered the truth, but because you have repeated the thought so many times that it begins to feel familiar. And familiarity can sometimes disguise itself as truth. The river continues flowing. You watch the moonlight breaking apart on its surface. It reminds you of the memory you were holding. The memory also seemed solid, but when you looked at it again, it changed. Perhaps the mind is like this water, always moving, always reflecting, always taking the shape of what passes above it. You remain beside the river. The thought about tomorrow comes again. This time, you notice its shape. It begins with uncertainty. Then the mind tries to complete the picture. It creates a scene, then another, then another. You see how quickly it happens. And because you see the movement, something changes. Not much, not yet, but enough. You no longer have to believe that every thought deserves your full attention. You can let one remain unfinished. You can leave one question unanswered. You can allow a possibility to remain only a possibility. The forest does not demand that you understand every sound you hear. A branch cracks somewhere in the darkness. You do not know what caused it. You listen. Then the forest becomes quiet again. You do not need an explanation. The sound has passed. The same can happen inside you. A thought can arrive without becoming a problem. A memory can appear without becoming a journey. A question can remain a question. You look toward the distant fire. It is closer now. You can see the warm light moving between the trunks. Someone is sitting there. You cannot yet see the face, only the shape of a person beside the flames. The figure seems completely unhurried, as though there is nowhere else to be. You stand. The river continues behind you. You follow the path toward the fire, and once again, your mind offers you something to think about. You notice it. For the first time, you do not immediately follow. You keep walking. The thought remains behind you for a few moments. Then it fades. Another thought comes. You notice that one too, and you keep walking. The forest seems slightly quieter now, not because your mind has become empty. It has not. Thoughts are still appearing, but something has changed in your relationship with them. You are beginning to see that a thought can exist without becoming an instruction. It can exist without becoming a prediction. It can exist without becoming something you must solve. You reach the edge of the clearing. The fire burns low. An old traveler sits beside it. His clothes are simple. His face is calm. He does not look surprised to see you. He looks at you for a moment. Then he looks toward the river. He does not ask why you are here. He does not ask what has kept you awake. Perhaps he already knows, or perhaps there is nothing to know. He moves a small piece of wood closer to the fire. The flame rises gently, then settles. You sit across from him. For a while, neither of you speaks. The silence does not feel empty. It feels like the forest is speaking in a language that does not require words. You hear the river. You hear the wind moving through the bamboo. You hear the quiet crackle of the fire. And then, somewhere inside your mind, another thought begins to form. You almost reach for it, almost, but the old traveler watches the flame, and you watch it too. The thought remains unfinished. The fire continues burning. The river continues moving, and for a little while, you let the question remain where it is, unanswered, unfinished, still. The traveler finally lifts his eyes toward you. He says nothing. But after a long moment, he reaches for a small bowl beside the fire. He fills it with water from a clay vessel. The water trembles in his hands. He places the bowl between you. You look down. The surface is full of tiny ripples, and you begin to understand that the old man has not brought you an answer. He has brought you something to watch. The old traveler places the bowl between you. The water inside it is restless. Tiny circles move across the surface. You watch them. For a moment, you expect him to say something. He does not. The fire makes a soft sound behind him. A branch settles in the darkness. The river continues beyond the trees. You look down at the bowl again. The water is still moving. you become aware of something strange. You want it to stop. Not because the ripples are dangerous, not because anything is wrong. You simply want the surface to become smooth, so you wait. The circles grow smaller. Then one disappears. Another follows. But before the water becomes completely still, you notice yourself leaning closer. You are waiting for silence. And because you are waiting for silence, you are watching every movement. A tiny ripple appears. You notice it. Another one crosses the bowl. You notice that too. The water is almost still, but now you are concentrating on its stillness so carefully that the smallest movement feels important. The traveler sees this. He does not smile. He does not correct you. He simply places one finger into the bowl. A single circle spreads across the water, then another, then another. The surface becomes restless again. You look at him. He withdraws his hand. Nothing is said. The water settles slowly. You begin to understand the simple lesson. You cannot make water still by demanding that it become still. The harder you watch for perfect stillness, the more every ripple captures your attention. And perhaps the mind is like this. You have tried this before. You lie down, you close your eyes. You tell yourself that you need to stop thinking. Then you listen for thoughts. You wait for silence. You become aware of one thought. There it is. You try to push it away. Then you notice another. You become frustrated. Why am I still thinking? And now there is another thought. A thought about your thoughts. A thought about your failure to stop thinking. The mind has created another task. Be quiet. Be quiet. Be quiet. But the command itself keeps the mind awake. It is like standing beside a pond and repeatedly touching the surface while asking why the water will not become still. You look again at the bowl. The ripples are beginning to fade. This time, you do not wait for them to disappear. You simply watch. There is a difference. You are not trying to make the water still. You are allowing it to become still in its own time. The thought feels simple, almost too simple, yet something in you resists it. Because you have spent so much of your life believing that if something inside you is uncomfortable, you must immediately do something about it. A difficult thought must be solved. An uncertain feeling must be explained. A troubling possibility must be examined. A restless mind must be controlled. You have become accustomed to reaching into the water. You reach for the thought. You hold it. You turn it over. You ask what it means. Then you reach for the next one. The traveler takes a small stone from beside the fire. He places it in your hand. It is smooth from years of water moving over it. You turn it slowly between your fingers. He points toward the river. You look. The same water that shaped the stone is moving quietly through the darkness. It has been moving for longer than you can imagine. It did not need to force the stone into another shape. It simply continued, little by little, without argument, without impatience. You look down at the stone again. Perhaps the mind has forgotten this kind of movement. Perhaps you have. You have learned to push, to pull, to hurry, to resist. Even when resistance creates the very thing you are trying to escape. You remember the nights when you tried desperately not to think about something. The thought became stronger. You tried not to remember a person. The memory became clearer. You tried not to worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow filled your mind. You tried not to notice how tired you were, and suddenly you were counting the hours until morning. The mind can become trapped in a strange circle. You fight a thought. The fight gives the thought attention. Attention gives it strength. Its strength makes you fight harder. And the struggle continues, not because the original thought was so powerful, but because you kept returning to it. The traveler places another piece of wood on the fire. The flames rise, then settle again. You notice that he does not hold them in place. He does not tell the fire how high it should burn. He simply gives it what is needed: wood, air, space. Then he lets it do what fire does. Perhaps this is what the old traditions understood when they spoke of living without unnecessary force. Not weakness, not carelessness, something quieter. A way of allowing things to follow their nature. The river does not need to be persuaded to flow. The flame does not need instructions for every movement. A pine tree does not stand beneath the moon wondering whether it is growing correctly, and perhaps the mind does not become peaceful through greater control. Perhaps peace begins when you stop interfering with every movement. You look at the bowl again. The water is nearly clear. The moon is beginning to appear on its surface. You had not noticed the moon before. It was there all along. The ripples had simply made its reflection difficult to see. The thought stays with you. Perhaps stillness is not something you manufacture. Perhaps it is what remains when unnecessary movement settles. You do not have to create the moon's reflection. You only have to stop disturbing the water. The traveler lifts the bowl and carries it toward the river. You follow. The forest has become quieter. Mist moves between the trees. The branches of the bamboo bend slightly in the wind. You walk beside the old man without speaking. The path opens onto a small clearing. Below it lies the river. Beyond the river, dark mountains rise into the night. Their shapes are soft beneath the moon. You sit on a flat stone. The traveler places the bowl beside you. For a while, you simply listen. Water, wind, fire, leaves, your own breathing. Then, as often happens, a thought appears. You think about something you need to do tomorrow. You notice it. You begin to follow it. Then you remember the bowl. You stop. Not the thought. You stop your reaching. The thought continues by itself. It creates another thought, then another. You watch. There is no need to interfere. It feels strange, almost as if you are sitting beside a road and watching travelers pass without asking where each one is going. Some thoughts are pleasant. Some are uncomfortable. Some are familiar. Some are strange. But they all move. You do not have to become responsible for each one. You do not have to turn every thought into a decision. You do not have to build a house around every passing idea. The traveler finally speaks. His voice is quiet. He says that when the water is disturbed, The water does not need to be repaired. You look at him. He continues to watch the river. Ripples will settle when nothing keeps disturbing them. Then he becomes silent again. There is no grand explanation, no long teaching, just the river. You look at the surface. A fallen branch moves slowly downstream. The moon appears between two clouds. Its reflection breaks apart on the water. Then the clouds move. The reflection disappears, then returns. Nothing has been damaged. Nothing has been lost. The water simply changes with what passes above it. You think of your own mind. Perhaps you have treated every changing reflection as though it were permanent. A thought arrives. You say, "This is me." A fear arrives. You say, "This means something." A memory arrives. You say, "I must understand this." But perhaps a thought is only a thought. A reflection is only a reflection. The surface changes. The deeper water remains. The traveler stands. He begins walking along the riverbank. You follow. The path is narrow. Your footsteps are slow. You notice that the mind is still producing thoughts. Nothing magical has happened. You are still you. The past has not disappeared. Tomorrow is still uncertain. There are still things you do not understand. But you are no longer trying to settle everything at once. The thought about tomorrow appears. You let it pass. The memory returns. You let it remain behind you. A question appears. You do not demand an answer. And something begins to soften. Not the world, not even the mind. Something in the way you hold them. You realize that you have spent many nights trying to force your inner world into a shape it does not naturally take. You wanted certainty. You wanted perfect understanding. You wanted every question answered before you allowed yourself to rest. But life does not move that way. The river does not reveal its entire course at once. The forest does not show you every path. The mountain does not explain what lies beyond its summit. You discover the path as you walk it. Perhaps tomorrow is the same. Perhaps you only need to meet it when it becomes today. The old traveler continues ahead. Fire is now behind you. The river is beside you. The forest opens slowly toward the mountains. You walk beneath the trees. And for the first time, you are not trying to arrive anywhere. You are simply walking. A thought appears. You notice it. It passes. Another appears. You notice that one too. The night remains quiet. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the bend in the river, the path begins to rise toward a mountain lake. The traveler walks toward it without hurry. You follow. You do not yet know what he intends to show you there. But the higher you climb, the quieter the forest becomes. And above the trees, hidden somewhere in the darkness, there is water so still that the moon can rest upon it without breaking. The path rises gently through the trees. You follow the old traveler without asking where it leads. The forest has changed as you climb. The bamboo has become thinner. The pines stand farther apart. Mist drifts slowly across the ground, silver where the moon reaches it. Behind you, the river has grown quieter. You can still hear it, but only faintly now. A soft movement somewhere below. The traveler walks ahead. His pace has not changed. He does not hurry toward the mountain. He does not seem to be trying to reach anything. You begin to notice the difference between his walking and yours. You have always walked with somewhere in mind, a destination, a task, a reason. Even when you walked without knowing where you were going, some part of you was usually trying to arrive. The old man simply walks, one step, then another. The night does not seem to ask him for anything more. At last, the trees open. You reach a small mountain lake. It is almost perfectly still. No wind moves across it. No rain touches the surface. The moon hangs above the mountains, and in the lake, the moon appears again. This reflection is different from the river. There is almost no movement. The moon seems complete. You stand at the edge. For a while, neither of you speaks. The traveler sits on a flat stone beside the water. You sit nearby. The lake is so quiet that you become aware of your own breathing. You notice the movement of your chest, the small sound of air entering and leaving. You hear the branches behind you. You hear an owl somewhere in the distance. Then the sound fades. The lake remains. You look at the moon, then at its reflection. You understand why the traveler brought you here. A disturbed surface cannot show clearly what is above it. The moon may be full. The sky may be clear. But if the water is being stirred, the reflection breaks apart. The moon has not become broken. Only its reflection has. You think of the mind. Perhaps this is what happens when you spend the whole night reaching into it. A thought appears. You grab it. Another appears. You grab that one. A memory rises. You examine it. A fear appears. You argue with it. A possibility comes. You prepare for it. The surface never becomes quiet. And then you wonder why you cannot see clearly. The traveler picks up a small stone. He holds it for a moment. Then he drops it into the lake. The stone touches the surface. A circle spreads outward, then another. The moon breaks apart. Its reflection trembles. You watch. The traveler does nothing. He does not try to repair the image. He waits. The circles become wider, then weaker, then smaller. Eventually, the water becomes still again. The moon returns. Nothing had to be repaired. Nothing had to be forced. The lake simply stopped being disturbed. You look at the old man. He is watching the water. After a long silence, he says that the ancient way does not ask water to become clear. It only asks that you stop stirring it. His words are simple, but they remain with you. You think of all the nights when you tried to make your mind peaceful. You tried to force yourself to stop thinking. You tried to reach some perfect state where nothing would disturb you. And perhaps this effort became another disturbance. You were watching yourself, judging yourself, checking whether you were calm enough, wondering whether the thoughts had stopped. The mind was trying to become still while constantly looking at itself to see whether it had become still. The lake does not do this. It does not ask, "Am I calm now?" It does not measure its own silence. It does not become anxious when a leaf touches the surface. The leaf arrives. The water moves. The leaf floats away. The water settles again. There is no struggle. You watch a single leaf drift from the shore. It moves slowly toward the center of the lake. For a moment, it rests on the reflection of the moon. Then the current carries it away. You realize that stillness does not mean that nothing moves. The lake is not still because nothing ever touches it. It is still because movement is allowed to come and go. This distinction is small, but it changes something. Perhaps peace is not the absence of thought. Perhaps it is the absence of unnecessary struggle with thought. The traveler remains silent. You begin to understand why the Taoist sages so often looked toward nature. The mountain does not explain itself. The river does not defend its direction. The tree does not become anxious when one branch bends in the wind. Everything seems to follow its own nature. The water flows downward, the fire rises, the clouds gather and separate, the seasons change. Nothing has to be convinced, and yet human beings often live as though every part of life must first receive permission from the mind. We want to understand before we accept. We want certainty before we move. We want guarantees before we release our grip. We want the future to become clear before we stop worrying about it. But the future is not a lake waiting for you to see its entire reflection. It is more like a path through mist. You see a few steps, then a few more. The rest reveals itself when you arrive. The old traveler stands. He walks to the edge of the lake. You follow. He kneels and touches the water with his fingertips. The surface moves. The moon breaks again. Then he removes his hand. The circles spread. Slowly, naturally. The reflection returns. He looks at you. You understand that he is not teaching you how to stop disturbing the water. He is showing you that the water already knows how to settle. This is perhaps the heart of stillness. Not control, trust. Not the kind of trust that says everything will happen exactly as you wish. Something quieter. The trust that says you do not need to know everything before the next step. The trust that allows an unfinished question to remain unfinished. The trust that allows a thought to pass without following it. You sit again. The night deepens. The moon moves higher. The mountains become darker. You begin to notice thoughts returning. One thought about someone you know, another about something you should have done, another about tomorrow. You watch them. This time, you do not become frightened by their appearance. You remember the lake. A ripple is not a failure of stillness. A thought is not a failure of peace. The mind can move. The surface can change. And beneath it, there can still be depth. You remember something else. The old traveler never asked you to empty your mind. He never asked you to become someone different. He only showed you what happens when you stop interfering. Perhaps this is what naturalness means. Not becoming more perfect, not becoming more controlled, simply allowing things to be what they are. The pine tree does not try to become bamboo. The bamboo does not envy the pine. The river does not wish to become the mountain. The mountain does not try to become the river. Each follows its own nature. And perhaps you have spent too much time asking your mind to become something it is not. You have demanded silence from a mind that naturally produces thoughts. You have demanded certainty from a life that naturally contains uncertainty. You have demanded permanence from things that naturally change. Maybe the struggle begins there, not with thought itself, but with the demand that thought behave differently. The traveler walks toward a large pine tree at the edge of the lake. Its branches stretch over the water. He sits beneath it. You sit beside him. For a long while, neither of you speaks. There is no lesson waiting, no conclusion, only the sound of the night, the lake, the wind, the distant river. You begin to feel something that is difficult to describe. Nothing outside you has changed. The same questions remain. Tomorrow is still unknown. The past is still the past. There are still things you cannot control. But you are no longer asking those things to become certain before you allow yourself to be quiet. You let the uncertainty remain. You let the thoughts appear. You let them leave, and slowly, the mind becomes less like a room full of voices, more like the lake, a surface beneath the moon, sometimes touched by wind, sometimes crossed by leaves, sometimes perfectly clear, never required to remain one way forever. The old traveler closes his eyes. You look at the lake. The moon is reflected again, perfectly. You do not try to hold the image. You know it will change. A cloud may pass. The wind may return. A leaf may fall. And that is all right. The reflection does not need to last forever to be beautiful. Perhaps thoughts are the same. They do not need to disappear forever. They only need to be allowed to move. A thought comes. A thought goes. The lake remains. The moon remains above it. And beneath the surface, the water remains deep. You sit there for a long time. The night has become very quiet. Then, somewhere behind the mountain, a faint wind begins. It touches the tops of the pines. The lake trembles. The moon breaks into silver fragments. You watch the reflection disappear, and for once, you do not reach toward the water. You simply wait. The wind passes. The surface begins to settle, and slowly, almost without effort, the moon appears again. The traveler opens his eyes. He looks toward the water, then toward the path leading down the mountain. There is no need to say what comes next. You stand. The two of you begin walking. The lake remains behind you. Its surface continues settling in the darkness. And as you descend beneath the pines, the old traveler says only one thing. There is a way of moving through life without pushing against everything that moves. Then he continues walking. You follow him down the mountain. The words stay with you, not as an instruction, not as a rule, only as a quiet possibility. And somewhere below, beyond the trees, the river is waiting. It is moving around stones, moving through darkness, moving without needing to know where every bend will lead. You listen to its sound, and for the first time, you begin to wonder what it might mean to move through your own life in the same way, without forcing every step, without answering every thought, without disturbing the water merely because you are afraid of what might be beneath its surface. The river grows louder as you descend. path carries you toward it, toward another kind of wisdom, a way of acting without unnecessary force, a way of moving without constantly pushing the world to become what you think it should be. The traveler walks on. The moon follows silently above the trees, and the river keeps moving beside you. The river grows louder as you descend. You walk beside the old traveler beneath the pines. The mountain is behind you now. Ahead, the forest opens into a long valley. Mist moves slowly above the ground. The river follows the valley without hurry. Sometimes it disappears behind trees. Sometimes it comes close enough that you can see the pale moonlight moving across its surface. You continue walking. For a while, neither of you speaks. The words from the mountain remain with you. There is a way of moving through life without pushing against everything that moves. You think about this. It sounds simple, but when you look at your own life, you begin to see how often you push. You push against uncertainty. You push against uncomfortable thoughts. You push against memories you wish were different. You push against people who do not behave as you expect. You push against yourself when you fail to become the person you think you should be. Even at night, when nothing needs to be done, the mind continues pushing, trying to make tomorrow clearer, trying to make yesterday different, trying to make the present feel safe. The traveler stops beside the river. He looks at the water. Then he steps into the shallow current. You follow. The water is cold around your feet. The river moves around your ankles. You notice something immediately. You cannot make the river move differently by resisting it. If you stand against the current, the water pushes around you. If you walk with it, the water continues moving. The river does not become easier because you have understood it. It simply continues being what it is. The traveler walks a few steps downstream. Then he stops. He points toward a large stone in the middle of the river. Water moves toward it. The stone does not move. The river does not become angry. It divides. One stream passes to one side. Another passes to the other. A little farther downstream, the two streams meet again. The river has changed its shape, but it has not lost its direction. You watch the water. The traveler says that this is close to what the old sages meant by Wu Wei. The words are quiet. Wu Wei. You have heard the phrase before. Perhaps you have thought it meant doing nothing. But the river is clearly doing something. It is moving. It is carrying leaves. It is shaping stones. It is finding its way through the valley. Wu Wei is not simply stillness. It is not laziness. It is not refusing to act. It is action without unnecessary force. The river moves, but it does not fight every stone. The tree grows, but it does not pull at its own branches to make them longer. The dawn arrives, but it does not hurry the night. Everything moves, yet nothing seems to be forcing itself to become something else. You stand in the river and think about how different this is from the way you often live inside your own mind. A thought appears. You immediately decide whether you like it. If you do not like it, you push against it. If you like it, you hold on to it. If it frightens you, you study it. If it promises something pleasant, you imagine it again. The thought becomes an object of control, and because you keep touching it, it remains near you. Perhaps this is why some thoughts become so persistent, not because they are stronger than you, because you keep meeting them with resistance. The traveler steps back onto the bank. You follow. The forest floor is soft beneath your feet. He continues along the river. You walk beside him. After a while, he asks you to look at a pine tree. It stands on the side of the mountain. Its trunk is bent. One side of it has grown outward toward the light. Its branches have been shaped by years of wind. It does not look perfect. It does not look symmetrical. And yet it stands. The traveler says nothing. You look at the tree for a long time. Perhaps if the tree had fought every wind, it would have broken. Instead, it bent. The wind passed. It rose again. Another storm came. It bent again. The tree did not control the wind. It responded to it. There is a quiet intelligence in this, not the intelligence of calculation. Something older, something natural. The ability to respond without wasting strength on resistance. You think of your own thoughts. How much energy is spent fighting what has already appeared? A memory has appeared. You say it should not have happened. A feeling has appeared. You say you should not feel this way. A possibility has appeared. You say it must not happen. A thought has appeared. You say you must stop thinking about it. And each refusal creates another movement. You are not only experiencing the thought, you are fighting the fact that the thought exists. Wu Wei begins to look different now. It is not about becoming passive. It is about removing the unnecessary struggle. If a thought appears, you can see it. If a problem requires action, you can act. If someone needs an answer, you can answer, but you do not have to begin every action by fighting reality itself. You do not have to spend your strength wishing that what has already happened had not happened. You do not have to argue with the fact that tomorrow is uncertain. You do not have to demand that life give you guarantees before you move. The river does not need a guarantee that the valley will remain open. It moves until it reaches the next place. Then it responds. Perhaps this is enough. Not knowing everything, only responding to what is actually here. You walk farther into the valley. Moon has begun to lower toward the western mountains. The darkness is softer now. There is a faint suggestion of morning somewhere beyond the horizon, but the forest is still night. You hear water. You hear the occasional movement of leaves. The traveler continues ahead. You begin to notice something else. When you stop trying to control every thought, there are fewer things to hold. A thought comes. You do not have to answer. Another comes. You do not have to reject it. A memory appears. You do not have to rewrite it. A question arrives. You do not have to solve it immediately. This does not mean that problems disappear. It means that you stop turning every thought into a command. The mind says, "What if?" And you do not have to respond with an entire story. The mind says, "Remember this," and you do not have to walk back into the past. The mind says, "Be careful," and you can listen without becoming frightened. There is space between a thought appearing and you following it. You begin to discover that space is small at first, almost invisible, but it is there. The traveler reaches a place where the river becomes narrow. Water passes quickly between two dark walls of stone. He stops. You look at the current. It moves faster here. Then, beyond the narrow passage, the river widens again. The water slows. The traveler says that the river does not complain when the valley becomes narrow. It simply becomes narrow. When the valley opens, it opens. This is not surrender in the sense of giving up. It is something more alive. It is responsiveness. The river meets what is here, not what it wishes were here, not what it fears might be here. What is here? You let the idea settle. Perhaps much of overthinking begins when you leave what is here. You go backward. You go forward. You imagine what someone meant. You imagine what they might say. You imagine what could happen. You imagine what should have happened. And the mind moves farther and farther away from the actual moment. Wu Wei brings you back, not through force, through simplicity. What is actually happening now? The river is moving. The wind is passing. Your feet are on the earth. The old traveler is walking beside you. The night is becoming lighter. That is enough. You do not need to solve everything beyond this moment. The next step will reveal the ground beneath it. The next bend will reveal what comes after the bend. You do not need to see the entire road tonight. You continue walking. The traveler becomes quieter. Perhaps he knows that the words have already gone far enough. The forest begins to thin. You can see distant hills through the trees. A small flock of birds moves across the pale sky. They disappear beyond the mountain. You watch them. They do not seem to have a map, yet they know when to rise, when to turn, when to descend. They move together, then separate, then gather again. There is movement without constant calculation. You wonder what would happen if you trusted life in the same modest way. Not completely, not blindly, just enough to stop demanding that every step be visible before you take it. The path turns. The river turns with it. You follow. A thought about tomorrow appears again. This time, it feels different. You can still see the possibility. You can still imagine the conversation, but you do not enter it. You allow tomorrow to remain tomorrow. Then another thought appears. You remember something you regret. You notice the memory. You do not try to erase it. You allow yesterday to remain yesterday. And suddenly, there is only the path, only the sound of the river, only the cool air against your face. The thought has not been defeated. It has simply been left alone. Perhaps that is what non-forcing means here. Not forcing thought to disappear. Not forcing peace to arrive. Not forcing yourself to become still. You are simply removing your hand from the water. The river does the rest. You walk for a long time. The old traveler eventually stops beside a small wooden bridge. Beyond it, the path leads toward a quiet valley. He turns toward you. For the first time since you met him, he looks directly into your eyes. He does not give you another teaching. He only says that the river never needs to know the entire shape of the mountain before moving forward. Then he crosses the bridge. You follow. Halfway across, you stop. Below you, the water moves in darkness. You look down. A leaf passes beneath the bridge, then another. Neither one asks where the river is going. They simply allow themselves to be carried. You watch them disappear into the distance, and something inside you becomes quieter. Not because you have found an answer, because you have stopped asking for one. The bridge ends. You step onto the other side. The traveler is already waiting. The valley ahead is open. A soft rain has begun, very fine, almost like mist. The drops gather on the leaves. The forest becomes silver. The river becomes darker beneath the rain. You and the traveler continue walking. There is nowhere you need to reach tonight. The path is enough. The rain is enough. The river is enough. And for a while, you feel what it is like to move without pushing. The world continues. You continue with it, not ahead of it, not behind it, simply with it. And as the rain grows softer, the traveler leads you toward a small shelter hidden among the trees. Inside, there is a wooden floor, a simple lamp, a place beside the window. Beyond the glass, the rain falls over the valley. You sit down. The traveler leaves the door slightly open. You can hear the river. You can hear the rain, and you realize that nothing needs to happen next. Not yet. The mind may still offer another thought. It may still ask another question. Let it. The river does not stop because one leaf falls into it. The rain does not stop because one drop lands differently from another. And you do not need to stop because one thought appears. You can allow the thought to move. You can allow the moment to move. You can allow the night to become whatever the night becomes. Outside, the rain continues. Inside, the lamp burns quietly. And somewhere beyond the window, the river carries everything it has gathered through the darkness. It does not hold onto any of it. It simply carries it onward. For now, you sit beside the open window and listen. The questions are still there, but they no longer need your hands around them. And slowly, the night begins to feel less like something you must get through, and more like something you can simply allow to be. The rain continues outside the small shelter. You sit beside the open window. The wooden floor is cool beneath you. A small lamp burns in the corner, its light barely reaching the walls. Beyond the window, the valley has disappeared into mist. You can still hear the river. It is farther away now, soft, steady, almost indistinguishable from the rain. The old traveler sits on the other side of the room. He has said nothing for a long time. There is nothing left to explain. The night itself seems to have taken his place. You listen. Rain against leaves, water against stone, wind moving through the trees. The sounds come and go. None of them stay. You notice that your mind is still moving too. A thought appears, then another. But after the long walk through the forest, they seem less solid. One thought about tomorrow, one memory from the past, one small concern. You notice each one, and then you return to the sound of rain. You do not have to solve anything. The thought about tomorrow can remain unfinished. The memory can remain a memory. The question can remain a question. For a while, This feels unfamiliar. You have spent so much time believing that every unfinished thing must be carried. An unanswered message, an uncertain decision, a conversation that did not end the way you wanted, a mistake that still feels close, a future that cannot yet be seen. You have carried all of these into the night, as though the darkness were a workshop where everything could finally be repaired, but nothing is asking to be repaired right now. The rain does not need your help. The river does not need your instructions. The trees do not need to know what morning will bring. The night does not need to become anything else. It is simply the night. You look through the window. A drop of rain gathers at the edge of a leaf. For a moment, it remains there. Then it falls. Another drop takes its place. Then another. The leaf does not hold the water forever. It receives it, then releases it. You watch. There is something peaceful in this, not because the rain has stopped, because nothing is trying to stop it. You think of the thoughts that have been passing through you tonight. Perhaps they can be received in the same way. A thought arrives. You notice it. Then it goes. You do not have to keep it. You do not have to throw it away. You do not have to decide what it means. It can simply move. The old traveler rises. He walks toward the door. For a moment, you think he is leaving. Instead, he steps outside into the rain. You watch him walk a short distance toward the river. He stops beneath a large pine tree. He stands there quietly. You follow. The rain touches your face as you leave the shelter. The air is cold. The ground is soft. You walk beside him. Neither of you speaks. The river is swollen from the rain. It moves with more strength now, but it still does not seem hurried. Water gathers from hundreds of small streams, drops from the trees, rain from the mountains. Everything joins, everything continues. The traveler points toward the river. You look. A branch has fallen into the water. The current carries it downstream. It turns once, then twice. For a moment, it becomes caught between two stones. The water continues pressing against it. Eventually, the branch slips free. The river carries it onward. You watch until it disappears. The traveler turns back toward the shelter. You follow. Inside, the lamp is still burning. You sit again. The rain becomes softer. You begin to notice how tired you really are, not only the body, something deeper. The tiredness that comes from carrying questions that have no answer tonight. You have been asking the future to tell you what it will become. You have been asking the past to explain itself. You have been asking other people to behave in ways they may never behave. You have been asking yourself to know things you cannot know yet. Perhaps this is where so much of the struggle begins. Not with what is happening, but with the demand that what is happening should be different. You want tomorrow to be certain. You want yesterday to be harmless. You want people to understand you. You want every choice to have a clear answer. You want the path ahead to be visible. But the night offers none of this. And strangely, it does not need to. The darkness does not apologize for being dark. The mist does not promise to reveal the mountain. The rain does not explain when it will stop. Everything remains partly unknown. And you are still here. You are still breathing. You are still held by the earth beneath you. Perhaps uncertainty is not something you must eliminate before you can be at peace. Perhaps it is simply one of the conditions of being alive. The traveler sits beside the window again. He watches the rain. After a long silence, he says that a person can spend an entire night trying to see through the mist. But the mountain does not come closer because you stare at it. The words settle quietly. You look outside. The mountain is still hidden. You cannot see its shape. But you no longer feel the same need to see it. Morning will reveal what morning reveals. Until then, the mist can remain. You breathe slowly. The rain continues. Your mind offers another thought. This time, it is about something you should have done differently. You see the memory. You feel the familiar pull, the urge to return, to examine, to correct. But you stay where you are. The memory remains in the past. You do not need to walk back into it. Another thought comes, something about tomorrow. You notice it. You do not travel forward. You remain here. Rain, lamp, river, breath. The present is not very complicated. It is the mind that keeps adding distance. You begin to see how often you leave the moment without physically moving. A thought can carry you across years in a second. A memory can return you to a room you have not seen in a decade. A possibility can place you inside a future that may never happen. The body remains here. The mind travels. Perhaps returning does not require force. Perhaps you only have to notice that you have gone. Then come back, not with anger, not with disappointment. Simply return, the rain, the lamp, the river, the breath, again and again. The old traveler does not tell you to do this. You discover it yourself. The mind wanders. You notice, you return. The mind wanders. You notice, you return. There is no failure in wandering. A bird leaves one branch and returns to another. A cloud moves across the moon and eventually passes. A river bends and continues. Movement is not the opposite of stillness. Perhaps stillness is the ability to remain open while movement happens. You sit quietly. The lamp flickers. The rain grows lighter. Somewhere outside, a bird makes a single sound. Then silence returns. The night is beginning to change. You can feel it. Not morning yet, but the deepest part of the night has passed. The traveler stands once more. This time, he does not leave. He walks toward the small table in the corner. There is a clay cup there. He fills it with water. Then he places it in front of you. The surface is completely still. You look at it. You remember the bowl by the fire. You remember the lake. You remember the moon breaking apart and returning. You understand now that stillness was never something you had to force. The water settles when you stop touching it. The mind may be similar. You do not have to solve every thought. You do not have to answer every question. You do not have to complete every story. Some things can remain unfinished, not because they do not matter, because tonight is not the time for them. Tomorrow will have its own hours, its own light, its own decisions. When it arrives, you can meet it, but tonight, There is nothing wrong with leaving some doors closed. Some questions can wait outside. Some conversations can remain unfinished. Some mistakes can remain in yesterday. Some possibilities can remain possibilities. The night does not ask you to carry them. You look at the cup. The water reflects the small lamp. A tiny golden shape floats on the surface. You breathe. The reflection remains. You do not touch the cup. You do not test whether the water is truly still. You simply let it be. Outside, the rain has almost stopped. Drops fall from the trees long after the clouds have begun to move away. The river continues. The forest is dark. The mountains remain hidden. But the world feels complete enough. Nothing has been solved, and yet nothing is missing. This is difficult for the restless mind to understand. It wants completion. It wants the final answer. It wants to close every circle before allowing itself to rest. But life contains open circles, questions without answers, paths whose destination cannot yet be seen, people whose intentions remain unknown, days that have not happened. And perhaps these things can remain open. Perhaps an unfinished thought does not need to become an unfinished night. You look toward the old traveler. He is watching the first faint light appear behind the mountains. He says nothing. Neither do you. The rain has stopped. Water still falls from the leaves. One drop, then another. Then silence. The river carries the rain away. The night carries the thoughts away. Not all at once, not by force, simply by continuing. You sit beside the window. The world is slowly becoming lighter, and you realize that you have not spent this part of the night trying to become peaceful. You have simply stopped fighting every movement. The mind still moves, but you no longer have to move with it. A thought appears. You see it. It passes. Another appears. You see that one too. Nothing needs to happen. The night can remain the night. The rain can remain rain. The river can remain a river, and you can remain here for a little longer, without solving tomorrow, without repairing yesterday, without asking this moment to become anything other than what it already is. The first bird calls from somewhere beyond the trees. The old traveler looks toward the sound. Morning is beginning, but before it arrives, there is one last stretch of darkness, a quiet space between night and day. You sit inside it, and for once, you do not fill the space with thought. You let it remain empty. You let it breathe. You let the river speak. And as the first pale light touches the mist, the old traveler opens the door. The path outside is wet. The forest is still. The mountains are beginning to appear. There is more to walk, more to see, more that life will eventually ask of you. But none of it needs to be answered yet. For now, you step outside. The air is cool. The earth is soft beneath your feet, and somewhere beyond the trees, the river continues toward the valley. You walk beside it, quietly, without hurry, without asking where the path will end, just allowing the morning to arrive when it is ready. The first light is beginning to touch the mountains. You walk beside the river. The old traveler is a few steps ahead. The rain has passed, but the forest still carries it. Drops rest on the pine needles. They gather on the bamboo leaves, then fall quietly to the earth. The path beneath your feet is damp. The air is cool. Everything feels newly washed. And yet, the questions have not disappeared. They are still somewhere inside you. Tomorrow is still waiting. There are things you have not decided, things you do not know, things you wish had happened differently, people whose words you still remember, moments you still cannot explain. None of these have been solved, and perhaps that is the first thing you begin to understand. They do not need to be solved right now. The river moves beside you. You watch a small leaf drifting along the current. It moves slowly at first. Then the current carries it faster. It disappears beneath a bridge. For a moment, you cannot see it. Then it appears again, farther downstream. The leaf was never lost. It was simply beyond your sight. Perhaps some things in life are like this. You do not need to see the whole path for the path to continue. You do not need to know what comes after the bend. You only need to walk as far as the next bend. You continue. The old traveler does not speak. He seems to understand that the river is enough. You pass beneath tall trees. The morning light becomes stronger. Birds begin to move between the branches. The forest is slowly returning to the ordinary sounds of day. But inside you, the night has not completely disappeared. You remember the person whose words stayed with you. You remember the mistake. You remember the possibility that frightened you. And for a moment, the old urge returns. You want to understand. You want to know what it meant. You want to know what will happen. You want certainty. The mind reaches forward. Then you remember the lake, the moon breaking on the water, the reflection returning when the surface became still. You stop walking. The traveler stops too. You look at the river. You notice that it is not perfectly still. It does not need to be. The surface moves. Light moves across it. Leaves move. Branches cast shadows. Yet the river remains a river. Stillness was never the absence of movement. You understand this now. Perhaps your mind does not need to become empty. Perhaps thoughts can come. Thoughts can go. And you can remain. The traveler sits on a stone beside the water. You sit beside him. For a while, you simply listen. The river makes its quiet sound. A bird calls, then another answers. The wind moves through the trees. You feel the cool air against your face. And then the old memory returns. You see it clearly. You remember what you said. You remember what you should have said. You feel the familiar wish to go back, to change one sentence, one decision, one moment. But the past is not standing in front of you. It is only a memory appearing now. You can let it remain a memory. You do not have to punish yourself with it. You do not have to rewrite it. You do not have to make it disappear. You can allow the past to belong to the past. The river carries another leaf away. You watch it disappear. There is something gentle about the way the water does this. It does not hold anything. A leaf arrives. The river carries it. A branch arrives. The river carries it. Rain arrives. The river carries it. The water does not ask whether each thing deserves to continue downstream. It simply moves. Perhaps you can let some things move too. A memory, a question, a regret, an old conversation, a fear. You do not have to push them away. You only have to stop building a home around them. The traveler stands. You follow him. The path leaves the river for a while. It passes through a field covered with morning mist. The sun is still low. The grass is wet. Tiny drops of water shine like small pieces of glass. You walk slowly. The world feels very large, and your worries feel smaller. Not because they have become meaningless, because you are no longer standing inside them. You can see them from farther away. A concern about tomorrow is still a concern, but it is not tomorrow. A memory is still a memory, but it is not happening again. An uncertain possibility is still uncertain, but uncertainty is not the same as danger. This thought stays with you. You have often treated uncertainty as something that must immediately be removed. If you do not know, you imagine. If you cannot control, you prepare. If you cannot predict, you worry. But uncertainty has always been part of the path. The river does not know every stone it will meet. The bird does not know every branch it will land upon. The clouds do not know which valley they will cross. And yet the world continues. Perhaps life does not require certainty. Perhaps it requires attention. You do not need to know the entire day. You only need to meet what is actually here. The traveler stops in the middle of the field. He points toward the sky. A cloud is moving slowly above the mountains. It changes shape as it travels. You watch it. For a moment, it resembles a mountain, then a bird, then nothing familiar at all. The cloud does not seem concerned. It does not try to preserve its shape. It changes because the wind changes. Then it disappears beyond the mountain. You think of your own thoughts. Perhaps they can be allowed the same freedom. A thought does not need to remain because you noticed it. You do not have to make every thought permanent. Some thoughts can simply pass. Some questions can remain open. Some decisions can wait. Some answers can arrive later. And some things may never receive the answer you once wanted. Even that can remain unfinished. The mind resists this. It wants a final door, a final explanation, a final moment when everything makes sense. But the Taoist way does not promise that life will become completely understandable. It points towards something quieter. You can live without grasping every part of life. You can walk without seeing the whole road. You can allow change without demanding that it explain itself. You can meet the present without dragging every unfinished thing into it. You continue through the field. The mist begins to lift. The mountains become clearer. The old traveler walks toward a small wooden bridge. Below it, a narrow stream joins the river. You stop above the water. Two currents meet. For a moment, they appear separate. Then they become one. Watch the water continue downstream. You think of yesterday and tomorrow. They seem so different. The past behind you, the future ahead. And yet, right now, both exist only as thoughts. The past appears in memory. The future appears in imagination. The only place you can actually stand is here, on this bridge, in this morning, listening to water. You breathe. The mind becomes quiet for a moment. Then another thought arrives. You smile softly, not because the thought is funny, because you no longer need to be surprised that thoughts return. They are allowed to return. You do not have to make them stop. You simply notice, then continue. The traveler begins walking again. You follow. The path leads toward a small grove of bamboo. The morning light moves between the tall green stems. They sway gently. None of them stands perfectly still. They bend, they rise, they bend again. The wind passes through them. The bamboo does not fight the wind. It does not need to. It moves with it. You stand beneath the bamboo and listen. There is a soft sound above you. Leaves touching leaves. Wind moving through hollow stems. A sound that seems almost like distant rain. You realize that much of your suffering has come from trying to hold things in place, trying to hold a relationship exactly as it was, trying to hold a version of yourself that no longer exists, trying to hold certainty, trying to hold an answer, trying to hold a thought until it finally explains itself. But everything changes. The river changes. The clouds change. The forest changes. You change. Perhaps the peaceful mind is not the mind that holds everything still. It is the mind that allows things to move without following every movement. You leave the bamboo grove. The old traveler is waiting near the edge of the forest. Beyond him is a wide open valley. The sun has risen higher now. The night is gone, but something from the night remains. A quietness, not silence, a kind of space. You look back toward the mountains. The lake is hidden beyond them. The river winds through the valley. The path disappears into the distance. You realize that there will always be another bend, another question, another uncertainty, another morning, and perhaps this is not a problem. Perhaps life was never meant to be completed before it was lived. You think about all the things you wanted to solve last night. Some of them already seem smaller. Some still matter. Some will need your attention later. But later is allowed to be later. You do not have to carry the entire day before the day has begun. The traveler walks toward the valley. You walk beside him. There is no destination spoken, no promise, no final answer. Only the road, only the morning, only the quiet movement of life around you. And suddenly, you understand something that the restless mind often forgets. An unfinished thing is not necessarily a dangerous thing. A question can remain open. A conversation can wait. A decision can wait. An apology can wait until it can be spoken clearly. A plan can wait until the time comes to make it. A problem can remain untouched for a few hours. Nothing collapses simply because you do not solve it at midnight. The river does not demand that you carry every stone it passes. Why should you? You walk on. The valley is wide now. The forest behind you grows smaller. The morning sky is pale blue. A few clouds move slowly above the distant hills. The traveler turns toward you. For a moment, neither of you says anything. Then he continues down the path. You follow. There is still much you do not know, but you no longer feel the same need to know it all at once. The future can remain hidden. The past can remain behind you. The present can be enough. The river continues beside the path. Its surface catches the morning light. You watch it move, and somewhere inside you, the water seems quieter now. Not because the river has stopped, not because the thoughts have disappeared, but because you have stopped reaching into the current after everything that passes. You let the river carry what belongs to the river. You let the past remain behind you. You let tomorrow remain ahead. And you walk with what is here. One step, then another. The path is open. The morning is gentle. There is nothing you need to solve right now. Nothing you need to force. Nothing you need to hold. For the first time in a long while, you simply continue walking. And the river walks with you.